Welcome to the Legends in English, where you can enjoy English listening practice while discovering motivational life stories of great leaders. Today, learn English through the inspiring journey of Sukarno, Indonesia's first president. His life teaches us courage, confidence, and hope, while helping you improve English learning through real, meaningful stories. Before the world knew him as Sukarno, the first president of Indonesia, he was just a young boy with bright eyes, a sharp mind, and a heart full of dreams. He was born on June 6, 1901, in Surabaya, a town on the island of Java. It was a land rich in culture and ancient traditions, yet deeply wounded by pain and injustice. Indonesia was under Dutch colonial rule, and freedom was only a distant dream for its people. Sukarno was born into a time when Indonesians had little control over their own lives. The Dutch ruled the land, the economy, and even the voices of the people. They decided who could study, who could speak, and who could dream. But even as a child, Sukarno felt that this was wrong. Deep inside his heart, he believed that every Indonesian deserved freedom, dignity, and respect. His father, Raden Sukemi Sosrodiharjo, was a schoolteacher who taught him discipline, education, and service to society. His mother, Ida Ayu Nayaman Rai, came from a Balinese Brahmin family and filled his life with spirituality, kindness, and inner strength. From both parents, Sukarno learned that courage shapes destiny. As a child, Sukarno grew up listening to stories of ancient Javanese kings, brave warriors, and powerful empires that once ruled the archipelago. These stories awakened something powerful inside him. While other children played, Sukarno imagined a future where Indonesia stood proud and free. He did not know how or when, but he believed freedom would come. In school, his intelligence quickly stood out. He was curious, confident, and fearless. He asked questions others were afraid to ask. Why do foreigners rule our land? Why can't Indonesians decide their own future? Such questions were dangerous under colonial rule, but Sukarno valued truth more than fear. His father worried about him, yet Sukarno's sense of purpose only grew stronger. By his teenage years, Sukarno had become a powerful speaker. His words carried passion and hope. When he spoke of freedom, people felt inspired. When he spoke of injustice, people found courage. He once said, "One day Indonesia will rise." People laughed seeing only a boy. But destiny was listening. History was waiting. The boy from Surabaya was growing, and so was the fire in his heart. As Sukarno grew older, his questions became deeper and more powerful. He wanted to understand freedom, injustice, and the future of his people. For this, he needed education not just to earn a degree but to sharpen his mind and strengthen his spirit. As a teenager, Sukarno was sent to HBS Huger Burger School in Surabaya, one of the best Dutch schools of that time. For most Indonesian children, studying there was almost impossible due to strict colonial rules. But Sukarno's intelligence and determination opened doors that were usually closed. Life in Surabaya exposed him to new ideas, cultures, and philosophies. Yet the most important influence came from the people he met. His life changed forever when he began living in the house of Hos. Tjokro Manodo, a respected nationalist leader and founder of the Serkat Islam movement. Every evening, Sukarno listened quietly as Tjokro Manodo spoke about politics, justice, and the dream of an independent Indonesia. Great thinkers and young activists often visited the house. Sukarno absorbed these discussions deeply, learning how ideas could move people. Tjokro Manodo once told him, "If you want to lead the people, learn to be their voice." These words stayed with Sukarno for life. He began reading widely books on nationalism, socialism, Islam, democracy, and world revolutions. He studied leaders like Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and Mahatma Gandhi, and he developed a deep respect for Indonesia's unity in diversity and cultural strength. In school, Sukarno stood out not only for his intelligence but for his powerful speaking ability. When he spoke, his words carried pain, hope, and the fire of change. By adulthood, he was no longer just a student, he was becoming a symbol of awakening. Later, Sukarno moved to Bandung to study engineering at the Teknisch Hogeschool, now IP. While he performed well academically, his true passion was freedom. There he formed close friendships with Sartono and Iskak Tjokrohadasurjo. Together, they discussed politics, wrote articles, and dreamed of a united Indonesia where all people were equal. This period shaped Sukarno into a thinker and a leader. His ideas grew sharper, and the Dutch authorities began to fear his influence. But Sukarno remained fearless. He once wrote, "If my ideas scare them, it means I am on the right path." The seeds of revolution had been planted. Sukarno's mind had awakened, and the journey toward freedom had truly begun. As Sukarno entered his early 20s, he was no longer just a curious student. He was becoming a bold thinker who carried the dream of Indonesia's independence deep in his heart. During his time in Bandung, these dreams slowly turned into action. In 1927, Sukarno took one of the most important steps of his life. He founded the Indonesian National Party, PNI Partai Nasional Indonesia. The goal was clear and powerful: to free Indonesia from Dutch rule through unity, courage, and national awakening. This was not an easy or safe decision. The Dutch controlled everything: education, economy, government, and even freedom of speech. Anyone who spoke against them risked arrest or worse. But Sukarno was not afraid. He believed the people had remained silent for too long. Now it was time to rise. Through PNI, Sukarno began traveling across Java, delivering speeches that were fiery, emotional, and full of hope. Farmers, students, workers, women, and elders gathered to listen. When Sukarno spoke, something special happened. He didn't just speak with words, he spoke with his soul. He spoke of unity, dignity, and courage. He imagined an Indonesia where children had a future and people lived with freedom, not fear. One listener later said, "When Sukarno spoke, it felt like the sun had risen inside our hearts." His influence grew rapidly, and that made the Dutch nervous. They watched him closely, collected his writings, and labeled him a dangerous threat. Sukarno knew arrest was coming, but he refused to stay silent. He believed that if he didn't speak, no one would. In 1929, the Dutch arrested him and sent him to Sukamiskin prison in Bandung. The prison could not silence Sukarno. Inside his cell, he wrote one of his most powerful works, Indonesia Menggugat. The book was a fearless attack on colonial rule and a powerful call for human freedom. When it reached the people, it spread quickly. Sukarno became more than a leader, he became a symbol of resistance. During his public trial, the Dutch expected him to apologize or break down. Instead, Sukarno stood tall. His defense speech shocked the courtroom and inspired the nation. He declared, "You can jail me, but you cannot jail the spirit of freedom." These words echoed across Indonesia. Thousands joined the independence movement. Even from behind bars, Sukarno had become the voice of his people. When the Dutch released him in 1931, hoping to weaken him, they failed. Sukarno emerged stronger than ever, and his journey toward freedom had only begun. When Sukarno was released from prison in 1931, the Dutch believed he would slow down. They thought jail had weakened him, made him cautious, or silenced his revolutionary spirit. They were wrong. Sukarno returned stronger than ever. His speeches were sharper, his ideas clearer, and his message unwavering. Indonesia must stand as one nation, free and united. To the Dutch government, this was dangerous. Sukarno was no longer just a young activist. He had become a national symbol. His voice inspired thousands. His words ignited the spirit of resistance. Killing him would make him a martyr, so the colonial rulers chose another path: to remove him from the people. In 1933, without warning, Dutch soldiers surrounded his home and took him away from his family and followers. This time he was not sent to a city prison. He was exiled to End, a remote and isolated town on the island of Flores. End was silent and lonely. There were no rallies, no political discussions, no crowds. The Dutch believed that without an audience, Sukarno would fade away. But they misunderstood the power of a revolutionary mind. In isolation, Sukarno rebuilt himself. He formed a small theater group, wrote plays, and deeply studied religion, philosophy, and global politics. He spent long hours walking by the sea, reflecting on the future of Indonesia. Loneliness weighed heavily on him, but he transformed that pain into clarity and wisdom. It was in this silence that Sukarno shaped his most important ideas: unity, nationalism, humanity, and the soul of a free nation. Later people would say, "End did not break Sukarno, it refined him." Still afraid of his influence, the Dutch exiled him again in 1938, this time to Bengkulu in Sumatra. Once more he faced isolation. Yet Bengkulu brought something unexpected into his life: love. There Sukarno met Fatmawati, who became his wife, his strength, and the mother of his children, including Megawati, a future president of Indonesia. Even in exile, Sukarno found purpose. Meanwhile, the world was changing. World War II was approaching. In 1942, Japanese forces defeated the Dutch, ending more than 300 years of colonial rule in Indonesia. With the collapse of Dutch power, Sukarno was finally free. More than that, he was needed. The Japanese required a leader who could unite and inspire the people. They turned to Sukarno. After years of silence, he returned to public life, welcomed by millions with hope in their eyes. The long night of exile had ended. A new dawn had begun, the dawn of revolution. When Sukarno returned to public life after years of exile, Indonesia had already changed. The Dutch were gone, defeated by Japan during World War II. For the first time in centuries, Indonesians felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Japan now ruled the country, but unlike the Dutch, they understood one powerful truth: Sukarno's voice mattered. Japan used Sukarno to communicate with the people, organize labor, and inspire unity. But Sukarno saw something more. He viewed this period as a rare opportunity to prepare Indonesia mentally and emotionally for freedom. Once again, he began speaking to the people, not with fear or doubt but with courage. His speeches burned with passion. They were poetic, emotional, and powerful. Sukarno awakened the Indonesian soul. He reminded the people of their identity, culture, and unity. He taught them that freedom was not a dream, it was their right. During this time, Sukarno introduced ideas that would later shape the nation. One united Indonesia. Justice for all. Strong national spirit. Freedom from oppression. Slowly belief returned. The dream of independence, buried under years of fear, rose again. However, working with Japan was dangerous. Many Indonesians saw Japan as another colonizer. Some doubted Sukarno's intentions, believing he was helping the enemy. But Sukarno had one clear goal: to use every opportunity to prepare Indonesia for independence. He once said to a close friend, "I will work with anyone, even the devil, if it helps free my people." By 1945, Japan was losing the war. Sukarno knew time was running out. If Indonesia did not act quickly, another foreign power might return. Then, on August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered. Chaos followed. Japanese soldiers were confused. The Dutch tried to return. And the Indonesian people waited anxiously for one moment: the declaration of independence. Inside Sukarno's home, young nationalist leaders pressured him to act immediately. Sukarno wanted to avoid violence. "We must be wise," he said. But the youth believed the moment could not be wasted. Finally, Sukarno agreed. On the morning of August 17, 1945, Sukarno stood outside his modest home in Jakarta. The Indonesian flag, sewn by Fatmawati, fluttered softly. With calm determination, Sukarno spoke the words that ended centuries of suffering. "We, the people of Indonesia, hereby declare the independence of Indonesia." In that moment, a nation was born. People cried, embraced, and celebrated. Farmers, workers, elders, and children all felt the same emotion: freedom. The dream had come true. But independence was only the beginning. Ahead lay struggle, sacrifice, and war, because the Dutch were not ready to let Indonesia go. When Japan took control of Indonesia in 1942, Sukarno saw it as both danger and opportunity. The Dutch had ruled Indonesia harshly for more than 300 years. Now they were gone, but Japan was not a savior. Japan wanted resources, soldiers, and loyalty. Sukarno understood clearly. A new ruler has come. But a new name does not mean freedom. I must protect my people and prepare them for real independence. Many Indonesians were confused. Should they fight Japan or support them? Sukarno chose a different path. He decided to cooperate, not because he believed in Japan, but because he wanted to use the situation to unite Indonesians. He knew that open resistance would mean death, but cooperation could give him space to organize the people. This decision became one of the most debated parts of his life. Japan allowed Sukarno to speak publicly, organize groups, and gather crowds. They wanted him to motivate Indonesians for Japan's benefit, but Sukarno used this opportunity wisely. For the first time, millions of Indonesians heard his voice directly. He traveled from village to village, island to island. Everywhere he went, crowds shouted with love. Bung Karno! Bung Karno! To the people, he was more than a leader. He was hope. Japan created organizations like Putera, Jawa Hakakai, and PETA to serve their own goals. Sukarno turned them into tools for freedom. Through them, he spread nationalist ideas, trained leaders, built communication networks, and helped young Indonesians develop discipline and confidence. By 1944, Japan began losing the war. American forces were advancing, and Japan needed Indonesian support more than ever. Sukarno saw the moment. If Japan needs us, then we must demand our freedom. Independence cannot wait. In 1945, Japan announced that Indonesia would soon become independent. Sukarno immediately began preparing the foundation of a new nation. Japan formed the Investigating Committee for Independence, and Sukarno became its strongest voice. In these meetings, he spoke about unity, justice, humanity, and the future of Indonesia. On June 1, 1945, Sukarno proposed Pancasila, the 5 principles of the nation. 1. Belief in one God. 2. Just and civilized humanity. 3. Unity of Indonesia. 4. Democracy guided by wisdom. 5. Social justice for all. Pancasila united people of different religions and cultures into one Indonesian family. Soon after Japan collapsed, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed. Japan surrendered. Indonesia stood at crossroads. The Dutch wanted to return. The people wanted freedom. Sukarno knew the truth. If we delay even one day, the Dutch will come back. We must declare independence now. The stage was set for the most dramatic moment in history, the birth of a new nation. The dramatic night and the birth of Indonesia. Japan surrendered on 15 August 1945. For Indonesians, this was the moment they had waited for centuries. But danger remained. The Dutch were preparing to return and rule again. If Indonesia did not act quickly, the dream of freedom could be lost. Young nationalist leaders like Sultan Sjarir, Wakana, and Cheryl Sale believed independence must be declared immediately. They feared that Sukarno and Hatta might wait for Japan's approval, something the youth strongly opposed. On the night of 15 August, youth leaders went to Sukarno's house in Jakarta. They said, "Bung Karno, we cannot wait anymore. Declare independence now." Sukarno replied firmly, "We must act wisely. A declaration without preparation can cause chaos. We need unity, not confusion." But the youth felt time was running out. At dawn on 16 August 1945, they took a bold step. Sukarno and Hatta were taken to the small town of Rengas Dengklok. The message was clear. We will not let you return until independence is proclaimed. This became one of the most dramatic moments in Indonesian history. Sukarno listened carefully. He understood the passion of the youth and realized that the moment for independence had truly arrived. That evening, after discussions between senior leaders and the youth, Sukarno and Hatta were brought back to Jakarta. Everyone gathered at the house of Admiral Mida, a Japanese official who secretly supported Indonesian independence. In a quiet room, history was written. The atmosphere was tense. What should the proclamation say? How strong should the words be? Finally, Sukarno said, "Independence is not given. Independence is taken." Sukarno wrote the final text in his own handwriting. The document was simple, but powerful enough to change the fate of millions. 17 August 1945, the morning of freedom. At Sukarno's house on Pegingsan Timur 56, people gathered with hope and emotion. Though sick with fever, Sukarno stood before the crowd and read the proclamation. "We, the people of Indonesia, declare the independence of Indonesia." Tears flowed. Voices rose in prayer and joy. Indonesia was born. A red and white flag sewn by Fatmawati was raised. The people sang Indonesia Raya for the first time as citizens of a free nation. On 18 August 1945, Sukarno became Indonesia's first president and Muhammad Hatta the vice president. The constitution was adopted. Pancasila became the national ideology. Indonesia became a republic. But freedom was not easily accepted. The Dutch returned with force. A new struggle began, not for a dream but for survival. The challenges ahead would test Sukarno and the nation like never before. The final war, the rise of a nation. Indonesia had declared independence, but the world was not ready to accept it, especially the Dutch. They returned with troops, warships, and weapons, believing Indonesia could be taken back easily. But they were wrong. A new Indonesia had been born, and its people were no longer afraid. Between 1945 and 1949, Indonesia faced enormous challenges. Two Dutch military invasions, economic collapse, political divisions, foreign pressure, and internal rebellions. Cities were bombed, villages were burned, and thousands fought and died for freedom. Through all this chaos, Sukarno traveled across the country, inspiring the people. He said, "We will not bow to colonialism again. We are independent in our hearts, and no army can defeat a nation that stands together." His words gave courage to everyone, children, men, and women. The struggle became a movement of the entire nation. Indonesia followed two powerful strategies. First, diplomacy. Sukarno, Muhammad Hatta, and Sultan Syahrir negotiated with the world. Second, resistance. Indonesian fighters bravely fought Dutch forces on the ground. Slowly, international support grew. India strongly supported Indonesia. Egypt recognized Indonesia as a free nation. The United Nations demanded negotiations. Facing global pressure, the Dutch could no longer continue the war. After 4 long years of struggle, on 27 December 1949, the Dutch finally transferred sovereignty. Indonesia was internationally recognized. The long night of colonialism ended, and the morning of freedom truly began. Sukarno said, "Today, the chains of 350 years have been broken." He became a symbol of independence not only for Indonesia, but also for many Asian and African nations still fighting for freedom. However, independence was only the beginning. Leading a vast and diverse country was extremely difficult. Sukarno believed Indonesia needed unity more than competition. He introduced guided democracy, acting as a national father figure who balanced nationalists, religious groups, communists, and the military. Some supported this system. Others opposed it. But one truth remained: Sukarno always placed Indonesia first and himself second. In 1955, Sukarno hosted the historic Bandung Conference. Leaders from 29 Asian and African nations gathered in Indonesia. For the first time, formerly colonized nations spoke with one voice. Sukarno declared, "Let us not be separated by ideology. Let us unite against colonialism, racism, and oppression in all its forms." His speech made him a global icon and a hero of the developing world. Despite his popularity, Indonesia faced serious problems: inflation, political tension, Cold War interference, and growing conflict between the army and communists. In 1965, a mysterious political crisis erupted. Violence spread across the country. Hundreds of thousands lost their lives. Sukarno tried to restore calm, but his influence faded. Power was slowly taken from him, and he was placed under house arrest. His voice, once the fire of the nation, was silenced. Still, he said quietly, "I only wanted one thing. My people should live free." Sukarno spent his final years in silence. On 21 June 1970, he passed away. Millions attended his funeral, whispering, "Thank you, Bung Karno." Today, Sukarno is remembered as the proclaimer of independence, the first president of Indonesia and the father of the nation. His words still inspire. Reach the stars even if you must stand on your tiptoes. His life teaches us that one voice can awaken a nation, one dream can change the world, and courage and love can defeat empires. Sukarno gave Indonesia not just freedom but a soul, and his legacy will remain eternal. Thank you for listening to this inspirational life story and practicing your English with us. If this story motivated you, let us know in the comments. Which legend story would you like to hear next? Subscribe to the Legends in English and continue your English learning journey through powerful life stories.